If you believe in aliens, we got some news that will blow your mind. Water's the source of all life, and NASA's been discovering it on Mars for ages. But its rovers recently found something that will change the way we see the human species on Earth forever. Does this mean all the UFO sightings are true? That there's extraterrestrial life out there waiting for us to get in touch? Will humans finally get to terraform and colonize Mars? Stick around to find out, because we're ready for a blast-off. First up, what has the Perseverance rover found? The Perseverance rover, or Percy, as it's called by most people, landed on Mars about 2 years ago, and it made its first discovery, a rock that seemed to be volcanic in origin. It was one small discovery for humankind, but a big achievement for the little rover, and it would end up making it even greater achievements as time went by. You see, Percy is the most sophisticated piece of human technology to explore Mars. But while the mission of previous rovers, like the Curiosity rover, was to explore Mars geologically, Percy had one goal programmed into its chips: find any signs of life possible. The first order of business was to check out Jezero. Jezero is a huge crater near the equator, and from far away, it seemed like it was a former lake environment. And wherever there was water, there was bound to be microbes, which is code for anything bacteria or fungi for anyone who doesn't know. Percy's next discovery was even greater. At Jezero's western curve, Percy located a dried-out delta and a riverbed that seemed to have been etched thousands of years ago. Yep, you heard that correctly, an etched riverbed. This was basically a neon sign saying that water was on Mars. But as you'll come to know, it gets even more exciting from here onwards. A little less than 3.5 billion years ago, after multiple volcanic eruptions around the area, water flowed from the nearby highlands into the crater to form a lake that lasted not just for millennia, but for tens of thousands of years. And as it turned out, Jezero was full of surprises, because the next thing Percy dug up was carbon-based materials. Carbon, for those of you who are unaware, is the basic building block for all life on Earth. This was just another thing that pointed to the theory that maybe life in space isn't that far away from us. Sadly, we're about 3 billion years too late to see the above-ground lake and any living life forms. But of course, Percy's mission wasn't over yet. Even if it wasn't able to find signs of existing life in Jezero, it still had the rest of Mars to explore. But before we get to any other discoveries Percy might have made, we have to bring up the underground lakes. Specifically, the ones that we found way before Percy even began its mission. What is the underground lake debate? Scientists have suspected the existence of an underground lake on Mars for years at this point. The idea was first proposed in 2018, and since time has passed, it has gone from absurd to very believable. In 2020, bright radar reflections were observed by the Mars Express probe, and scientists immediately started thinking of this development as further evidence of the presence of liquid water. Now, the pole is way too cold to have liquid water on the surface, but if the water was warmed by the planet's core, then it wouldn't be beyond the realm of possibility. On top of that, water tends to freeze over in temperatures below freezing point if it has high salt concentrations. And since this was the most likely case with any water ever present on Mars, it lends even more credibility to the theory. Evidence found as late as 2022 seemed to back up this hidden lake hypothesis. According to a study published in the Nature Astronomy journal, the lake could be located as much as 1 mile beneath the surface and could be as large as 18 miles across. Poor Percy wouldn't be able to see it from one end to the other. If this theory turns out to be true, then it would have been the only example of liquid water on the planet until we made the discovery of March 2023, but let's get to that part later. But like every other thing to do with the red planet, there have always been skeptics. Despite the evidence of an underground lake under the pole being stronger than ever now, some people have argued that it's just way too cold there for something like that to exist. Some geologists, like David Lalick from Cornell, have suggested that the only way to be sure is to drill all the way down to where the lake is suspected to be. Of course, this scenario is as impossible as it sounds. It's difficult enough sending the rovers to Mars, let alone complex drilling equipment that would allow us to see miles underground. So where does that leave us now? And what's the reason why we can't find life on the surface instead? Our current rovers just aren't good enough. The thing is, the rovers we've had up until now haven't been capable of finding life. The small life forms could be way too elusive for us to find. We've known since the first Viking orbiters landed on Mars nearly 50 years ago that the planet had water a few billion years ago. And we've also mentioned that both the Curiosity rover and Percy have found evidence of simple organic materials. But scientists have stressed that simple organic materials aren't enough to make any solid conclusions. So why haven't the probes found any actual life? The answer is simple. Just because we haven't found life doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Correlation does not imply causation after all. No, there's actually a much simpler explanation than that. The rovers we sent just aren't sensitive enough. They might be too clunky, or their cameras and testing equipment are not advanced enough for the job. Or, if you're a believer in conspiracies, life on Mars might be smart enough to avoid detection this way. So what's the solution? Well, one thing that can be done is to send rock samples back to labs on Earth, where they can be tested by state-of-the-art labs and the best scientists. You've probably guessed already, but this is also easier said than done. While it's probably the best option we see right now, this strategy can be implemented as early as 2033, and even that is way too far into the future. So the older rovers sending samples back is also a bit of a dead-end idea right now. This means our only hope right now is Percy and the signs of water on the equator. And this begs the question, what do we know about water on Mars today? Now here's where things get really exciting again. The groundbreaking announcement presented at the 54th Lunar and Planetary Science Conference will leave your mind blown. The conference went from the 13th to the 17th of March, and the information presented there was nothing short of a breakthrough, because scientists announced the discovery of a relic glacier near the equator of Mars. Do you know what this means? Water on Mars isn't just a pipe dream that may or may not have been true a gazillion years ago, but the liquid life could have been present recently as well. Imagine glaciers and shallow lakes that existed at the same time as humans and bacteria that had been evolving alongside the first signs of life on Earth. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? Now, the surface feature identified as a relict glacier is one of many light-tone deposits, or LTDs, found in the region. Most of the time, LTDs are made of light-colored salts that contain sulfates, so the words glacier is a little misleading in this context. To put it in simpler terms, the scientists haven't actually found a glacier made of ice, but salt deposits that could only have existed if the volcanic magma in the area came into contact with ice. It's basically like the fossil version of ice. Who knew salt deposits could tell us this much? This relic glacier is suspected to be about 6 kilometers long and 4 kilometers wide. Of course, more studies need to be conducted. For one thing, scientists still need to figure out how much water is still left in this relic glacier, but this discovery still means that Mars is a lot more hydrated than anyone had ever considered before. On top of that, if ice exists at shallow depths around the equator, then it means that humans have to replan any possible future explanation, because this means that we can have the best of both worlds. If humans ever colonize Mars, our activity won't just be limited to the frigid South Pole. We can enjoy the warmth of the equator while also enjoying hydration. And terraforming the planet is becoming more and more possible each day. On top of that, if even the smallest signs of life are confirmed to exist in the shallow ice, then it opens up a whole world of possibility. Because if microbes can exist on Mars, then full-fledged multicellular life forms are definitely living on other planets. All those UFO sightings and every signal we sent out to get in touch with other life forms suddenly become a lot more important. And what about Percy, you ask? Well, Percy has collected 18 rock samples up until now and is guarding them safely for their eventual transport to Earth. A spacecraft will be sent out to Mars in the early 2030s, as we've mentioned before, and collect all these little rocks. Meanwhile, the little rover is still climbing up the delta in search of more sedimentary rocks from places that used to be lakes and rivers. We wish it the best because whatever it finds is sure to fill us with a lot of excitement. Keep watching our videos for any new updates. Bye!